Good morning, dear students. Today we'll continue with the molecular basis, the second part, molecular basis of biology. Just recall what we had done last time. We had understood about what DNA is, okay, where DNA is present. So you know it is present inside the nucleus and inside the chromosome. And what this sequence contains, I hope you know very well. That is your very important. The sequence you can see A C T G, like that it goes on. Complementary is over here. So I hope you remember that. Just to recall, ribose binds with the any one of the nitrogenous base to form nucleoside. So at the first carbon atom it joins, it is called as your nucleoside. Bond name is N-glycosidic bond. When this nucleoside is bound with phosphate at the 5' end, that is your nucleotide. So with the help of phosphoester, okay, phosphoester bond, you are able to, we are saying phosphoester bond. Between the two nucleotide, I hope you remember. So there is your one nucleotide. I'm writing short form. Okay, next nucleotide. And between that, I hope you remember the bonding. The previous one has 3 prime, 5 prime here. So once the bonding has taken place, this is your phosphodiester bond. Okay, this one will be phosphodiester. You just go back to the picture which I had given last time. Phosphodiester bond. So it is between the nucleotides to form a polymer. Now this is the polymer. Many nucleotides are there. Please note, in this the DNA structure, the double helix model which you have drawn, everyone has not labeled the diagram. I have not mentioned it because I have given as a first practice. So today you have to do it again with the labelings. So you got the idea how to do the double helix. Now the labeling part. See that you are explaining at least one pitch. One pitch you are showing these base pairs. So you are saying on one strand G, which is triple bonded with C, then another here A is there, I'll write A. On the other strand it is T, so it is double bond. I hope you understood here what I'm trying to say. So you have to show one pitch. This is one pitch, and please write it, one pitch. One pitch, that is 3.4 nanometer. Between the two consecutive base pairs, the distance 0.34 nanometer. Then the diameter 2 nanometer. Then sugar phosphate backbone. And 5 prime, 3 prime, that's many of them have not written, some of them have written. See that you're including the labeling. Without labeling, there is no marks. Okay, I hope it is clear. Don't draw this, only this one I am expecting, and that too I'm not saying this kind of structure itself, in a simple way through which I've told. Okay, no need of showing this arrow. Okay, no need of showing the arrow. This is a better view to show the 3 prime end and the 5 prime end, the bonding between the complementary pairing. Okay, this is called as complementary pairing. So I won't delay much. Okay, here you can see clearly the phosphodiester bond. One ester is here, another ester is here, and phosphate. So phosphorus in between. So phosphate is your ionic form. This is called as your, between the two nucleotide, the bond is phosphodiester. Okay. Now, before I go there, I wanted to show you what, this is an extra information. Now you know very well, Watson and Crick are the ones, the pioneers of DNA structure. But before that, it was these two scientists who were working together. But this fellow seems to cheat her. Rosalind Franklin was the person who gave the properties of DNA, as well as she studied the X-ray diffraction and could try to get the structure. What did Wilkins do? He stole whatever she had recorded, whatever she had done the study, and gave it to them. And he, along with them, received the Nobel Prize. So you can see the information here. The whole story tells. It's so sad. Franklin couldn't get the award, whereas these three got the award. Though these three have got the award, only Watson and Crick is the name for the model. You might have seen as we study Watson and Crick model we say. So that is all extra information just to make you aware, okay, what scientists and all face. There are people who will steal away the research but not the talent. So what Rosalind Franklin's talent was there, that is recognized, but her work was not recognized. That is the poor thing. She would be well known. A lady scientist is already dragged down. So let us not go deeper into that argument. We'll just go to the next, what they had gone a little deeper. Francis and Crick. So Francis and Crick gave a particular, your structure. So we name it as your double helix model. And that, whatever he gave, the proposition of it. So the proposition of it meaning to say the on of your double helix model and its explanation in very simple way. Okay, so the genetics topic is very clear. This gave a wide opening to biology, so which was revolutionary. When I say revolutionary, a big change to the biologists. It was a clear picture what DNA is, where DNA would act, how it acts. We have the complete molecular structure. So this is your proposition we say. Now what did Francis Crick do? He is explaining a little more about gene expression. What is that gene? A piece of DNA. Okay, gene is a piece of DNA. What is that expression your enzyme has to form? Enzyme means protein. So here he is saying DNA will produce RNA. RNA will produce protein. So he has given names for that. Okay, for the process. DNA to RNA is transcription. Then RNA to protein, it is translation. Don't get confused. Transcription, translation. One thing you should remember, this RNA we write it as mRNA. The word M means messenger RNA. So when I say messenger, it is giving the information, okay, to express. Okay, it is giving the information to express. That is messenger RNA's work. So what is the expression? Final protein. Where is the gene? In the DNA. Who is the messenger? RNA. Okay. So, and all your A, G, T, all that, the sequence, based on that sequence, we get a protein. So you'll understand one by one as we go deeper into this concept. So what did Francis Crick call this method as? Central dogma of molecular biology. Okay, so when I say central dogma, it is the main principle. Dogma means set of principles. So it is the main principles followed in all organisms. When all organisms it is present. Okay, it is universal. That is what Francis Crick has found. And what does it state? Central dogma in molecular biology. The genetic information flows from DNA to RNA to protein. This is what he is stating in his central dogma of molecular biology. So that's what I've explained. DNA to RNA transcription. Okay, so you can say mRNA. Then mRNA to protein translation. You remember S phase of cell division, where DNA replicates, doubling of DNA. So that is called as DNA replication. Now I'm going to one more place. You know something called retroviruses. If you recall retrovirus in your first PUC chapter. Now retrovirus are RNA viruses. Remember, retroviruses have RNA in them. No DNA. DNA is not there in them. So what do? RNA, they have to if they have to multiply, they will multiply here. So this is called as RNA. But if they have to express, then the process is bit different. they will undergo reverse transcription. That is, they form DNA. From DNA to mRNA, mRNA to protein. So this is the direction: RNA to DNA, DNA to mRNA, mRNA to protein. This is in case of retroviruses. Okay, retroviruses. So please remember, this is all your central dogma explained by Francis Crick as well as Watson. He just helped. Their main idea was Francis Crick. So that's what you have understood here. It's in reverse direction, so we call that as reverse transcription 1 mark question. Okay, this is what in detail is shown. You can see DNA, if it has to double, it will double like this. You can see how it separates and a new synthesis takes place. Similarly, translation, you can see the blue color. Blue color is the one which is produced from one of the strands. And that blue color is used, so this formation of blue color is transcription. This blue color will be red, reading, red, okay. So red means READ itself. Now it is read by whom? It is read by the ribosome. We call it as ribosomal RNA, and tRNA carry the amino acid. So once the ribosomal RNA reads the mRNA, your specific amino acid gets attached and your new protein is formed. So I hope it is clear. Little idea you've got. I hope that is little understood before I go to the packing. So central dogma, just remember this in detail. I'm going as we go further. Okay, so first you should know the basics. So this is called as central dogma, the whole thing. Okay, DNA replication, transcription, translation. Okay, so this is all your gene expression. We are talking about your gene expression. So this is your central dogma. I hope it is clear. At least this translation, transcription, replication, reverse transcription. Okay, so all this I hope it is clear. So you just remember the one word. Okay, and you know the process very well. DNA to RNA, transcription. RNA to protein, translation. So remember that. So in your coming topic, that is in this chapter itself, it is coming later on. So you can understand there better. First, let us understand what and how the DNA occurs inside the cell. You understood the DNA, the double helix model, the basic component, that is your sugar phosphate and nitrogenous base forming nucleotide. But if you have to see, this is your okay, you can say this is one structure. Let me just show you one more structure. Okay, I have not kept it. I hope you remember there was a coiling stage over here. A coiling stage over here. I have not kept it here right now. Don't worry, you'll understand as I explain. Now it's better I show here. Can you see this kind of coiling? Now this is how the DNA is actually packed. It can be a little free, it can be tightly kept. So how they are arranged, based on that we are saying how the DNA is packed. Okay, so we are studying the packing of DNA. Very important question. Before you understand how the packing is, you should first know how long is your DNA alone. This DNA double helix, if you understand in mammalian cells, to know the length, we have to know how many base pairs are there. Please note, this is 10 to the power 9. This is 10 to the power minus 9. Okay, so please note that. Now this is your number of base pairs, and this is your distance between two consecutive base pairs. So how it is multiplied, it's explained here. Now Here they have just given, and you will get the approximate value, that is 2.2 meters. So this is what they have told: 6.6 into 10 to the power 9 base pairs into 3.34 into 10 to the power minus 9 meter, that is meter per base pair. Okay, so we are saying this is your calculation part, and we get 2.2 meters. So overall, if you see in each cell, if you have to collect, so this is one cell I'm saying. Again, if you collect one by one the cell of your body, it can go around the whole world 2 times. You can measure like that. Now we are taking only one cell and keeping all the 23 pairs in one, and you get 22.2 meters. So this is how they are saying that long DNA is very compactly, kept very small inside your whole cell, which is actually, if you stretch, it will be 2.2 meters approximately based on the calculation, but it is not visible to our eyes. Remember that. So this is how the calculation is given. So you have one more here. Try to do the same method. So here they have given, calculate the number of base pairs. If the length of E. coli is 1.36 millimeter, can you calculate the number of base pairs? So yes, we can, using a method over here. The same thing, this is common, and you have the length. I hope you know how to do the method. There is your, this is common, okay, the distance between the consecutive base pairs, and you have the length, like how the length is given here. Now you have to find out what is this. Use your maths skills, try to get, otherwise you can Google and answer me, no problem. Okay, so this is your, in case of prokaryotes, we are taking E. coli. Since you know prokaryotes, they do not have definite nucleus. Okay, DNA will not be scattered, but they will be present as a circular structure called nucleoid. You might have remembered we draw in the bacteria this way. You might have remembered you draw a circular DNA. So that circular DNA is called as your nucleoid. So in that nucleoid, I'll just show you the picture. It has all the large loops held by proteins. Again, proteins are there. Observe here. So this is called as nucleoid. Why nucleoid? Is there any nuclear membrane around it? No. So there is no nuclear membrane around it. Therefore, it is free but not scattered. Free but not scattered. Okay. Now, in case of eukaryotes, it is complex, as I showed earlier. You can see the coiling. So there are proteins involved with the DNA packing. So those proteins are positively charged and they are basic. So when I say basic proteins, they are positive. If I say acidic proteins, they are negative. So who is acid here? The DNA. So for the opposite for DNA is the positive. Positive is present on histones. So histone is the set of proteins. So if you see the basic nature or the positive nature, it is actually the histone containing residues of lysines and arginines that is creating the positive charge. Okay, so now you should know histones are forming 8 molecule structure. When I say 8 molecule structure, it will be like 4 pairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, not 4. Yeah, 4 pairs. I'm very sorry. Now let this only behind it will be present. I cannot draw it here, but let me show it over here. So you can see how the each circle is divided like this. 4 in front, 4 behind. Okay, so that's what they are trying to say. So how the DNA is packed. Before knowing the DNA packing, you should know who is involved in your DNA packing. It is your histone. So histone has your positive charge created by lysine and arginine. And histones, there are 4 pairs. Okay, so total 8 molecules. that are organized to form a unit, which is called as histone octamer. Okay, so histone octamer, your definition is here itself. Histones are organized to form a unit of 8 molecules. So if you want to know what is that 8 molecules, we have H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. Now you might wonder, where is H1? This is involved for the linking one nucleosome to another nucleosome. Now to know what is nucleosome, this whole histone octamer along with the DNA is called as nucleosome. Okay, now understand the sentence. Negatively charged DNA wrapped around positively charged histone octamer. It is called nucleosome. This is what we are seeing. So your H1 histone is here linking to the next histone octamer. So here one histone octamer. Around it you can see the DNA. This together DNA plus histone is formed to form your nucleosome. So I hope it is clear. So this particular DNA, which is wound around the histone octamer, okay, if you count the number of base pairs, it is said that it contains 200 base pairs. Okay, so that's what you have to remember. So nucleosome constitute repeating units of structure in nucleus called chromatin. Now what is chromatin? Now you have to go back here. This whole thread is your chromatin. Okay, and the chromatin is the one which carries the nucleosomes. That's why the nucleosome appears to be a bead-like structure. So I hope you have understood here. So thread-like chromatin. So nucleosome constitute the repeating unit of a structure in nucleus called chromatin. Thread-like stained body is seen in nucleus, which what they are trying to compare is your whole chromatin is actually the nucleosomes that are repeating again and again. So this is how that it goes on. DNA wound around the octamer and in between H1 protein. So this from far, okay, under the microscope, it looks like a thread-like structure. Okay, under microscope, it looks like a thread-like structure. If you put a stain, it colors. It gets colored. So I hope the sentence is clear. Okay, so it will constitute into a repeating structure which is called as chromatin. Under microscope, it is a thread-like structure. Now, so this is how I told you it appears beads on string. So that's what I said. When we say, if you go in ultrastructure, it looks like a beads. Beads are present on the string, like that it appears. So this is when you observe under electron microscope. That is when your nucleosomes are clearly seen. So this is again your 2-mark question. Please remember, 2-mark question. If it is 5 marks, please explain this as well as this diagram for 5 marks. Okay. So I hope it is clear. Remember, there is second, as I said, this is one, right? Now, this will again fold. Okay, again fold. So you can see the folding here. This is the second folding. DNA has already folded around the octamer. The second folding is along with the DNA, nucleosome is getting coiled. So this is second coiling or second folding, which is with the help of additional set of proteins called NHC protein. What is that NHC? Non-histone chromosomal proteins. Remember, 1-mark question to expand. NHC. Okay, so this is your second coiling. So packaging at higher level. So based on that packing, we have your tightly coiled heterochromatin, loosely coiled euchromatin. So if you observe here, in euchromatin you can find the DNA which is open. So it is able to express. In case of heterochromatin, there is no place for the DNA to be open. So there is no expression. I hope you remember what is gene expression. From DNA to RNA we have to get, right? So that is your gene expression, and it is possible here. Is it possible here? No. You don't find this space for the DNA to express. Now coming to the staining part. Observe this patch. You can find some dark patches, you can find some light patches. So they have pointed dark patches for tightly coiled. Okay, light patches is for loosely coiled. We are talking about the stain it takes up. Stain takes up very well by heterochromatin and very lightly by euchromatin. I hope it is clear. I have given the differences very clearly here. Please go through. Now, let us understand, to prove DNA is the genetic material. Okay, to prove DNA is the genetic material, it was experiments were conducted by various scientists, and the first person who began with that experiment was Frederick Griffith. So his experiment is called as transforming principle. Okay, so remember, after his experiment only the word comes, transforming principle. Let us understand what is his experiment. So his experiments, they are showing whether the cell possesses genetic material, okay, and which is the component that possesses the genetic material. Ultimately now we know DNA is the one, but his time 1928, it was not very well known the DNA was the genetic material. It was just known what is chromosome, what is factor, all that was known, but it was not known DNA or RNA or some protein is genetic material. That was a big question mark. So he studied on bacteria. So pneumococcus, or you can say Streptococcus pneumoniae. We follow Streptococcus pneumoniae from your textbook. So what he did, he studied on 2 strains of this Streptococcus pneumoniae. It causes pneumonia, a deadly disease. So this he grew in his lab on a culture plate. So he has got 2 strains. One was S strain or S cells, which will form colony with smooth shiny surface. Surface is smooth and shiny. And there was one more strain, R strain, to say the surface of the colony as rough colonies or rough surface. So it is based on the polysaccharide or the mucus coat. Okay, S had capsule, whereas R did not have the capsule. I hope you remember what is capsule, and I hope you remember what is slime layer. In your first PUC it is all that discussed. Okay, so this capsule is the one which is keeping them virulent. When I say the word virulent, it can cause pneumonia infection. When I say non-virulent, okay, non-virulent, it means it does not cause infection. 2 marks can be asked, give the difference between S strain and R strain. Please remember to write S strain, they produce smooth and shiny colonies and they are virulent. R strain, they produce rough colonies and they are non-virulent. You can add here one more point, virulent meaning causes disease, pneumonia. For example, for Streptococcus, we are saying pneumonia. And for R strain, it does not cause the disease. Okay. So I hope the 3 points are clear. This is the experiment he had conducted. So once he had understood about the S strain and R strain, so it is your virulent, non-virulent strain. So one which was virulent, the mouse died. And the one which was non-virulent is R strain. So R strain is safe because the mouse lived. Just observe next what he did. He heated the S strain. He knew R is safe, but S is the one which is causing disease. So what he did, he heated this and checked again in the mouse. What happened? All the bacteria got killed, right? Therefore, this mouse lived. But he did some little more mixing. And what did he mix? A living R strain was mixed with the heated S strain. So when you heat S strain, they are dead. But there is something, if you observe here, the result, something that has been transformed. So you'll understand in this fourth case, live R strain which was safe, dead S strain which was again safe, result was dead. The mice suffered from pneumonia. How did it happen? So this is what the experiment I've written. See, please note, in exam time, you're not supposed to draw all this rat and the injection and the cells here. It is only for your idea to get the concept. Okay. So what here we are showing is S was virulent, but when it was heat killed and added with the R strain, okay, it died. So the reason behind it was when we took the blood and cultured it, see what was observed. In the first two plates you will observe R strain has rough colonies, S strain has smooth colonies. When you heat kill the S strain, of course it is dead, nothing will form. Whereas when you mix these two, see what is produced. Highest it is the S strain. R strain are very little. This says there is something that made the S strain become active. So what it could be? What transformed? And he came to know it was the R that has transformed to S cell or S strain. So that is called as a transforming principle. So what he did, he took the blood, we say your autopsy, right? Autopsy, biopsy for the living person. We take the sample from our liver, a piece of tissue. So here the blood was analyzed in that fourth case where the mice died, and then he came to know it had all majorly S cells. So he witnessed that transformation. What was that transformation? R to S strain. So that was a physical form from rough to smooth strain. Immediately when he noticed that, he concluded saying that living R cells had somehow transformed into virulent S cells. But he could not give a conclusion whether it was DNA, a protein, okay, that was responsible. So he said there was something transferred, okay, into the next or into the another cell, and that is called as your transformation. So from R to S it has transformed. It is because some genetic material it is taken up by the R material, R strain. The reality is actually, after many studies, R strain, the bacteria, and S strain. S strain only the DNA was there, whereas R strain the whole cell was there, the whole bacteria. So transformation was because this R strain was able to take the DNA into the cell and become S strain. Okay, this was after many studies, okay, after many years. Till then he did not know it. He just said there was something was there that was transforming. So here we are just saying it is DNA. Okay, so that is DNA, that is the genetic material which has helped in transforming. So that transformation principle, I hope it is clear. But since we have not proved whether it was DNA, now biochemical experiments are conducted to prove DNA as genetic material. So what is that? 3 people came forward: Oswald Avery, Colin McLeod, and Macklin McCarthy. They went a little further in the findings of Griffith to demonstrate DNA is the genetic material. They want to prove DNA is the genetic material. So the aim of the experiment to determine the biochemical nature of transforming principle. So they took forward Griffith's experiment, and look at the points here. First he prepared the cultures. So you just observe here. He prepared the culture So in this culture, and which culture he has taken, it is your heat killed, okay, heat killed S strains. So I'm showing like this for you. Now here there are many components. Lipids are there, sugars are there, nucleic acids are there, proteins are there. In that, he went on adding one by one of the enzymes. For lipids, lipase was destroying. Okay, then see, you can see for proteins, proteinase, for RNA, RNase, for DNA, DNase. Okay, so like that only, lipase and carbohydrates. So first he removed lipids and sugars, and later he had a big question among RNA, DNA or protein. Among them, one is definite the genetic material. Okay, so he wanted to know further, so he did the experiment on these three. So DNase, RNase, proteinase on separate. Okay, so first test tube only proteinase. The second test tube only RNase. Third test tube only DNase. And the result is shown below. There was still transformation. That means it is not the protein. I wanted to kill the protein. Protein should not have helped in transformation. Now it is already transformed. That means protein is not the one. Then RNA. RNA is not there. But still here transformation occurred. So this means RNA is not responsible. Now DNA is not there. DNA is completely eliminated with the help of DNase enzyme. What result have you got? There is no transformation. It is still R. Heat killed S strain mixed with R, live R. It is still R itself. There are no S strains. This means DNA was responsible for the transformation. Okay. So if you want to be clear, you can just go through. So first he removed the lipids and carbohydrates, and then he treated with these three enzymes separately, and that's how he has got the result. So I hope it is clear. Based on the transformation principle, he came to know who is responsible for the transformation. So though his conclusions were very good, our scientists at that time, the biologists, were not convinced. Okay, they were not happy with the biochemical experiment, so they wanted a little more, because we can't say something that has stopped transformation is DNA because of the DNase enzyme. Now it doesn't mean that at that time it is only DNA who is responsible. I want to prove DNA is the one which helps in transformation. But here the ultimate aim was, what is the genetic material? So this to prove Avery, MacLeod, McCarthy had come, but they were unfortunately not accepted by the other biologists. Though the experiment was very valid, okay, despite the finding, the community was very reluctant to accept it. So this DNA as genetic material idea was much later on, that is after 8 years, two people came forward to make it very much acceptable. So DNA as genetic material was proved experimentally by Hershey and Chase. So you will understand now, the genetic material is DNA, proved by Hershey and Chase. So Alfred Hershey, Martha Chase, in the year 1952. So they had come forward with the unequivocal proof. The meaning of unequivocal, no doubt at all. So what was that no doubt? It was clearly shown. The experiment was clearly shown that DNA is the genetic material. So what did he work on? Now here he worked on bacteriophages. What is bacteriophages? Viruses that infect bacteria. You know about lytic cycle, right? So when I say lytic cycle, virus attaches itself to bacteria, it multiplies. So just see how it attaches. The protein is outside, DNA enters inside. Okay, so protein is outside, DNA enters inside. Need not be DNA itself, it can be RNA. we discussed earlier. For retrovirus, it is RNA. Okay, so now we are preferably taking DNA virus, that is your bacteriophage. Okay, bacteriophages are DNA, that is why we are preferring, this is studied, molecularly studied, so DNA, and this is how the DNA gets multiplied. This is your protein, okay, protein, that is protein code that is lost, whereas the new protein code can be synthesized within the host. Host is the bacteria here, bacterium E. coli. So what Hershey and Chase had done is, this is the principle, okay. So this is what we are saying, how the lytic cycle works. So bacteria, bacteriophage is a virus. It attaches to the bacteria. It inputs only the genetic material, okay, not the protein coat. So that's why there one difference can be seen. So how bacterial cell will treat the viral genetic? It will treat it as it is, as its own, okay, and therefore it will produce more virus particles. So you can take that example. I hope you know little about the lytic cycle. So using that concept, what he did, he first grew separately, okay, two sets he had done, okay, two sets. One viruses in this plate, okay, another, some viruses are kept here, and in this plate he has kept radioactive phosphorus here, P32, and radioactive sulfur, S35, okay. Here you can observe here S35, P32. Yes. So just observe what he had done. He had cultured them, okay, he had cultured them, and now he has got ready for the experiment. So what was his main aim? See, you know DNA has phosphate, right? DNA has phosphate, therefore P32 will bind to the phosphate present in DNA. So it is attached to DNA, not for the protein. In the other group, in other set, only he has put S35. So where is S? Sulfur is present in protein. In protein, you remember disulfide linkages. So protein has sulfur. So there it gets replaced with S35. So remember, we are using radioactive, which means under the UV light we can identify where the DNA or where the protein is moving. That's how the study was done by Hershey and Chase, which was very much acceptable, and it is easily proven, and people, the biologist, accepted it. So here what he did, he allowed for the infection. This is called an infection. You can see blending, meaning to say they are producing the new virus particles. So especially we are saying blending when after the infection, we are not allowing the lysis. We are not allowing the lysis. We want the live bacteria. We don't want the bacteria to die. So what we do is we blend. We start churning. You know your mortar and pestle, we grind. You remember for chromatography you had done the grinding method. Similar blending method we say, to separate the bacteria from the protein coat of virus. So once the blending is done, we have to centrifugate. Centrifugation, I hope you know, using a high force, it goes round and round. The test tube will be kept. So anything heavy will be here, anything light will be above. So based on that, he got supernatant, which was floating, and the cells which was deposited on the end of or the bottom of the test tube. So this is how he said, when he placed it under the UV light, he came to know here the cells did not show activity, whereas in another set the cells showed the activity, okay. And in the case of your supernatant, the protein coat showed the activity, whereas in case of the second set, the protein code did not show the activity. So what we are trying to say is, just observe what he's saying. When he showed it under the UV light, he came to know, that is your autoradiography, we come to know that the cell does not have S35 in its progeny. Whereas in case of the second set where we used phosphate 32, the radioactive phosphate, it showed the radiation back, the radiance, the fluorescence. So this proves that the DNA is the one which is passed on into the next cell, and the next cell is over here. So the DNA is present inside the bacteria, so the new virus particles can form. Okay, I hope you understood little. That's what the whole explanation is over here. This is the experiment part, and this is the conclusion. So what we are saying here, especially, it is indicating proteins did not enter the bacteria. Okay, proteins did not enter the bacteria. What entered? It was the radioactive DNA. Radioactive DNA that was entering inside the, because radioactive, why I am saying, his one of the experiment was clearly shown. P32 was seen. Okay, so this is how he proved DNA is the genetic material that is passed on. So I hope it is clear. So we are done with today's topics. If you have any doubts, let me know. Okay, thank you.